So I'd like to ask somebody from designing an accessible REU that supports the abilities of all students to come up. You can come, Chris, it's okay.
So I'm trying to remember what we talked about. Wasn't that like yesterday that we had that session? What we started off discussing was different areas of different problem areas of what. Help me out here, guys. What did we talk about? So one of the main ideas that we did, we got into looking at what's most important with an REU or with any type of a program, looking at what the main objectives are. And so once you identify your main objectives, being able to identify particular barriers. So if there might be barriers for somebody with mobility disabilities, somebody with a sensory disability, someone with a cognitive or a behavioral type of a disability. Identifying those barriers, and if the objectives can be modified to accommodate those students, and if they can, are they primary objectives, or do they become more secondary objectives? So identifying what's most important. One thing that we came up with was being able to accommodate all of your students. So if you have a student that happens to show up for your REU, hasn't necessarily disclosed any type of a disability, how do you accommodate that individual with very little notice? And we mentioned, and I'm really glad that Lisa was in there with us, because we mentioned what supports are available financially of being able to provide accommodation supports to support those students in different situations. One example that came to mind was that a student had been placed into a project that was physically demanding, but had a knee injury that he wasn't going to be able to complete that project. And unfortunately, that discussion didn't happen during the application process, and he had to be declined. Well, if there was more knowledge of the different resources and supports available to that student, he could have easily been paired with another individual where he was more of the director of the project, allowing someone else to be more of the grunt to carry the materials, to collect the data. That could have been overcome. And there's other situations as well, behavioral situations where a student who might be on the autism spectrum that is not particularly comfortable with social settings, and this student might be causing issue with the rest of the community. How do you support that? And so talking about ways of pulling the student aside to have conversations, realizing that it's not necessarily the student's fault because of those support, that skill set isn't there, but providing the supports of someone to work with that student to overcome those things. We also talked about open communication, making sure that the description of your REU is openly inviting and welcoming, and clearly shows that that you have created an inclusive opportunity where all students are valued, all of their perspectives are valued, that it's respectful, so that students realize that it's not just an add-on. You know, we talked that there's so many times and times that I've reviewed NSF proposals and horror stories that I've heard about NSF proposals where they try to slide in that one sentence thinking that, okay, my project's going to be completely, the broadening participation piece is there because I've added this one sentence into a 15-page proposal. It's clearly obvious when you're trying to add something on to make it appear like you are inclusive versus completely designing your project to where people reading it say, yeah, this is clearly inclusive. So the promotion piece into the application process, into once you've accepted your students, then you really start to get to know who they are and what accommodation strategies they need. So from identifying the barriers to your objectives, your learning objectives, your project objectives, the skills the students need, to maintaining that open level of communication. I know those were two of the main pieces that we talked about, and the rest of the group is just going to remain silent and not help me out. So there you go.
Can I ask you a question? So I just, what you said about writing an inclusive website, that's one of those things where I might think that what I've written is pretty good. Is your organization, or are you someone, or is there anyone who likes to read those kinds of things and say, oh yeah, this is good, or oh, you should change this?
And visual impairment issues, or, what colors on what?
Yeah, so to answer that, Ann, yeah, I'm more than willing to. There's several people that we could send those to. You have a lot of colleagues yourself that are members of the IAGD that could help with that. That's something, and thank you for saying that, because that's something else we talked about. The resources that the IAGD provides is available to everyone. And in fact, membership in the organization is completely free. Thanks for allowing me to do the plug. It's completely free. There's no dues. It's a quick sign up, and you get plugged into this community where ideas are shared, resources are shared all the time. And so you could always have somebody, you can post it to the listserv, say, this is what I'm trying to promote. Is this promoting accessibility? In fact, I have been working with the conference team at GSA to help them promote accessibility conference-wide. And they have a little ways to go, but if you notice their application process or their registration link, you'll start to see some accommodation that they're really reaching out and trying to support services for individuals. In fact, there are individuals that are coming to this GSA meeting that need hearing impairment accommodation, and they're providing those resources. So yeah, I'd be happy to. IAGD, it's right on the table.